Hello?
Jacob, can you hear me?
Hi, thanks a lot for joining in. We are just beginning in a few moments. We'll wait for 2 more minutes and then we'll get started.
Okay, are we waiting for somebody on our side, or you guys have more people joining? Oh, there you
go. We have more people joining in, so we are just waiting for them to join in, and we'll be beginning in another 2 minutes. Does that sound good?
Yep, I'm with us.
I think we'll get started and then people can keep joining in later on. Thanks a lot for joining in, everyone. I am Pranav. I work with the customer success team here at Anake. And in today's webinar, we'd be discussing how HR and people ops teams can transfer some of their daily workflows onto Slack, Microsoft Teams, and Google Chat in order to make these workflows more efficient. So the agenda for today is actually quite packed. We'd be starting off with some tips and tricks within Slack, MS Teams, and Google Chat. The idea is to get more out of your day and make your day more efficient. So these tips and tricks would help you enhance productivity. Then we'd be moving on to some of the specific areas of people operations and HR, like hiring, employee onboarding, time and attendance, employee engagement, and answering employee questions. So we'd be seeing how you can carry out each of these processes on Slack, Microsoft Teams, and Google Chat in the webinar. Before we go ahead and visit the tips and tricks section, a little bit about ourselves. So we are Anake. We are a company that started off 3 years ago with a mission of creating chat-based HR software. And we've got 3 products at the moment, Attendance Spot, Office Amp, and ExpenseTron. And the products are integrated with 3 platforms, Slack, Microsoft Teams, and Google Chat. Though we almost live inside Slack, we love to work with Slack, and day in and day out we use Slack, but we are not in any way affiliated to Slack. We are just a company that makes people management software on chat-based platforms. Moving ahead, now let's get started by talking a bit about tips and tricks. So in case you need to personalize your Slack or MS Teams, what you can do is that you can go across and change your themes. So let me just pull up my Slack screen. Now on Slack specifically, you would have this preferences section where you can just go to the themes and you can select a theme for yourself. The idea is that if you interact with multiple workspaces during the day, it is important for these workspaces to have different themes for you to be able to differentiate between these workspaces. Microsoft Teams also has a really cool feature where you can choose a dark theme and a default theme. So you can just go ahead in the settings panel and change your theme to the dark theme or the default theme that Microsoft Teams has given. You can further customize Slack by going ahead and having custom emojis and custom messages within Slack. The idea of custom emojis largely is that if any of the employees within the organization has adhered to the values that the organization really supports, you can just send out the company logo or a custom emoji onto a particular channel. In a similar fashion, you can also go ahead and have custom messages within Slack. Slack already has these preset messages that you see on your screen right now. But in case you want to go ahead and create custom messages, you can also go ahead and do that within Slack. One of my favorite features, a feature that I use day in and day out, and I'm sure a lot of you also go ahead and use this feature, is the notion of a channel, right? So you can go ahead and create a channel within Slack, and you can either have a public channel or either have a private channel within Slack. But channels are something that are fundamental to my workday, and I am sure a lot of other people also use this feature. Later on in the webinar, we'd also be seeing that how channels can be really essential for managing some of the HR workflows within Slack. So more on that later in the webinar. You can go ahead and have multi-channel guests and single channel guests within Slack. So you could just go to invite people and add on people as multi-channel guests or single channel guests. The idea being that all of the interns, freelancers, contractors that you work with that need not have all of the information about the company that is in the workspace, you can just go ahead and add them as single channel guests or multi-channel guests, which gives them access to only the relevant information and not all of the other information. You can also go ahead and pin posts onto Slack, and you can just go ahead and pin to a particular channel. And then you can also unpin this post at a later point. The idea is that if you have certain documents that the employees want to access or some kind of onboarding guides, you can just go ahead and pin them onto a channel, and people would be able to access those guides from there, and they don't really need to go anywhere else. Finally, I would like to talk a little bit about managing noise on Slack. I think we have a question.
Yeah, are you showing a screen, or because we're just stuck on tips and tricks?
I think there seems to be a lag. I'm sorry for that, but I'm right now showing a Slack screen. Are all of the others able to view a Slack screen?
No.
Oh.
No. Tips and tricks.
Okay, let me just unshare my screen and share it once again. I think that would be, yeah. So yeah, let me just unshare my.
We missed all that. We missed all that first part. All we were on was tips and tricks.
Oh gosh. Okay, so let me just go ahead and unshare my screen, and I'll share it again. Just a moment. Are you guys able to see my screen now?
Yes. Yes.
Yes, great. Sorry for that. So let's get, I'll just recap all of what I said. So we were visiting tips and tricks inside Slack. So what you can do is that in case you want to go ahead and change your theme with the idea of personalizing your Slack, you can just click on preferences and then come to the theme section and choose a theme for yourself. If you work with multiple workspaces during the day, then you can just go ahead and have multiple themes within different workspaces. The idea being that you can go ahead and differentiate between the workspaces that you're working on. In a similar fashion, what you can do is that you can go ahead and add custom emojis and custom messages within Slack. So custom emojis, as I said, that whenever an employee has done something that the company really believes in, you can send out a custom emoji. Like I have the company logo right here. So what we do is that whenever an employee has exhibited something that the company really believes in, we send out the company logo onto a particular channel. You can also go ahead and have custom messages within Slack. So Slack has a bunch of preset messages that you currently see on your screen. And then you can just go ahead and have custom messages in case you want. One of my favorite features in Slack is the feature of channels. So you can go ahead and create a public or a private channel within Slack, and you can post updates onto a particular channel. And later on in the webinar, we'd be seeing that, how channels is really an essential component within Slack, and how you can manage some of your HR and people ops workflows using channels. I'd also like to talk about a bit about how you go about managing noise within Slack. So you can go ahead and leave channels. That is something that I always suggest as a best practice. At a later point, you can always return and review the conversation that has taken place while you were away. The second thing that you can do is that from and manage your notifications right here. You can also go ahead and manage your notification preferences from here. So when you click on preferences, you can just go ahead and manage the notifications, and you'd be able to manage what notifications do you get on mobile devices and what notifications do you get on desktop. So you'd be able to manage the noise that happens inside Slack day in and day out. Any questions so far? Okay, right. I'm now back onto the tips and tricks screen. Do all of you see that
No.
now?
No.
Do you see the tips and tricks screen now?
Yep.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot. Great. So we would be moving on with some of the shortcuts. Shortcuts help us ramp up productivity. And one of my favorite shortcuts, something that I use day in and day out, is the shortcut of reminder. You can send, I think this is a feature that most people use to remind themselves about things, but what most people do not know is that you can also remind other users using the Slack bot. So you just say something like, remind a particular user to do something at some time, right? So I can go ahead and say, remind Glenn to write an email at 4 p.m. And then the Slack bot would remind Glenn to write an email to a particular client. What most people do use, and I think what most people are familiar with, is the DND and the away. So you can just set yourself to do not disturb and away. In case when you come into the office in the morning, you want to access all of your unread messages, you can just do a Control-Shift-A. And in case you want to see all of the shortcuts that exist inside Slack, you can just do a Control/. Great. So now we'll be moving on some of the specific areas of people operations and HR. First up, we'd be talking about hiring. I'd majorly be mentioning Slack over here, but all of the things that I mentioned are equally applicable to MS Teams and Google Chat as well, right? So you can go ahead and create hiring needs channel. We had touched upon channels in the tips and the tricks section. Now over here, what you can do is that just to streamline your hiring procedures and to coordinate the pipeline and discuss the future hiring needs of the company, you can have a private channel that only involves the senior management and the HR folks. And then you can go about discussing what are the future hiring needs, what are the job descriptions for the various roles. And then when that is done, you can have a public channel that is meant to secure all of the referrals that the employees give. And over here, you can just roll out open this channel to the whole company, and people would be able to give you referrals on that particular channel. Once you've gotten the referrals, the next step would be that you start preparing the panelists for interviews and getting feedback on each of the candidates. This again has to be a private channel just between the managers who are conducting the interviews and the HR team and probably some of the folks from the senior management. And you can essentially archive this channel after each hire. And then finally, a private channel to discuss the compensation structure that you're going to offer a particular employee. So all of these channels would help you streamline the hiring process from within Slack. Two Slack add-ons that are really indispensable in the process of hiring. You can use Lever and Greenhouse, and both these tools will help you streamline your hiring process within Slack, MS Teams, and Google Chat. I'm pretty sure that Lever and Greenhouse are available on Slack and MS Teams, and you can go ahead and give these tools a try. Now we'd go ahead and discuss how Slack uses Slack to onboard new hires, right? So Slack is a big organization. And what Slack does is that Slack has a dedicated workspace for new hires. And within this workspace, you've got various channels for each of the cohorts. And the cohorts can go ahead, access that particular channel and see all of the questions that the previous hires have asked. And if they have any questions of their own, they can just go ahead and send that out onto a channel. And then all of the new hire questions would be answered. Slack basically gives access to all of the new hires 2 weeks before they start. And then there are regular reminders sent out for the completion of onboarding tasks, uploading any documents on these particular channels. And you can also go ahead and pin your onboarding documents or guide to live in SF, NY, anything onto this particular channel. And the new hires can just go ahead and access that, right? While such a structure would not be possible for some of the smaller organizations, small and mid-sized firms. So if you're one of the small and the mid-sized firms, what I would suggest is that you can just invite the new hires as a single channel guest and then have a dedicated channel for each of the cohorts. If you need more help in onboarding, here's another tool that has a Slack and an MS Teams add-on. So Donut is one of the tools where you can go ahead, create customized onboarding plans, and then over a period of 30 days or 60 days, what would happen is that employees can just tick off all of the onboarding tasks that they have completed, and then they'd be able to complete all of the onboarding cycle in a period of 30 days or 60 days, right? So Donut can do that. And I would suggest that you go ahead and give the tool a try. Before we move on, at this point, I'd like to ask if there are any questions yet. Okay, we'll move on. Right, so finally, oh, we do have a question. I think no, though I'm not sure. I'm not the best person to give you that information, but I don't think the free Donut plan has that. Donut, in the free plan, what you can do is that I think you can go ahead and build limited number of onboarding plans, and then I think if you upgrade to the paid version, then you can go ahead have onboarding plans for different cohorts, and then your employees can just tick off all the tasks that they have completed, and they would be able to complete the onboarding journey within a period defined by the HR team and the people ops team. So I'm not the best person to answer that question for you, but I believe that's what it is. Great, thanks a lot. Moving on, so we'd continue talking about channels. So you can have a channel dedicated to welcoming new hires, wherein you can send out a small blurb about any new hire that has come into the organization. And then all of the team can go ahead and welcome that new hire. You can also go ahead and pin onboarding documents, FAQs onto this particular channel, and new hires can just go ahead, review those documents, and have all of their questions answered. Next up, we'd be moving on to the time and attendance tracking within Slack. And this essentially is one of the biggest parts of our job as HR and people ops teams, right? So you can go ahead and manage vacations and time off requests within Slack with one of our own tools, which is called Attendance Bot. The idea behind that is pretty simple. You send out direct messages to the bot, and you'd be able to create vacation requests. You'd be able to create clock in, clock out requests. And then these requests can be sent off to your manager, and your manager can go ahead and approve these requests. And you'd be informed that the manager has approved the vacation or time off request. Attendance Bot is available both on Slack, MS Teams, and even on Google Chat. And in case you work with any of these platforms, you can go ahead and feel free to give the product a try. You can also have vacation quotas within Attendance Bot. So if you've got unlimited quotas within the organization, you can have that. But if you have specific number of vacation days that the employees are allowed to take within a year, then you can just fix that amount right here. And then you can also go ahead and allow for the employees to roll over the leaves to the next year. Whenever employees are applying for leaves, they can go ahead, check their balances as well. So if you're heading out for a long vacation around Christmas and you want to check that, how many vacations do I have? So you can just send out a message to the bot, and the bot would be able to tell you what are the balances that you have got left. One of the major things is that as a tool on Slack, what we want to do is that we want to ensure transparency within the organization. And there are a bunch of ways Attendance Bot achieves that. So you can go ahead and view a team calendar, wherein you'd be able to view all of the vacations that your employees have created. You'd be able to view all of the holidays for your particular office. And I spend a lot of time on this particular calendar, just reviewing that how many people are out of office in a particular month, in a particular week, or on a particular day. It allows you to prepare the team for future projects. I think we have a question at this point. Yes, you can. So the idea is that for the rest of us, I'd just like to repeat the question. So the question is that, can you add more than one vacation plan on Attendance Bot? Yes, you can go ahead and do that. The idea is that you can create different vacation types, and you can go ahead and have different vacation plans in the bot as well. What I would suggest is that if you'd be interested in having a one-on-one demo of Attendance Bot, we can just go ahead and sync up offline after the webinar, and I'd be glad to take all your questions related to Attendance Bot as well. Does that sound good? Great. Moving on. So we were talking about ensuring transparency within the organization, and that can be done by the team calendar. Attendance Bot also has a summary command. So you can just say summary to the bot, and we'll pull up the absence summary for your team today, tomorrow, and the recent and upcoming leaves of your employees. Announcements and notifications is one of my favorite features in the bot. And what that does is that we've been talking about channels. And what you can do is you can invite Attendance Bot onto a particular channel, and then we'll be able to make upcoming vacation announcements onto those channels. We'd be able to make punch and punch out announcements on those channels. And a lot of our teams that we work with also use announcements and notifications to announce birthdays and work anniversaries. Finally, what you can do is that you can also integrate your Google and Outlook calendar with Attendance Bot. And what we would do is that whenever you're out of office, we are just going to block that day for you. And anybody who's trying to calendar time with you will get your vacation responder. So that's another powerful feature, a feature that I really love within Attendance Bot. Moving on, we would now be talking a bit about time tracking. So you can go ahead and say in and out to the bot, and the bot will be able to track how many hours have you devoted in a particular day. You can also go ahead and view the real punch status summary of your team. So how many employees are working, how many of them are on a break, and how many of them are currently out. You can just go ahead and see through the Attendance Bot punch board. Moving on, we would now be talking about creating some of the HR FAQs. And there is a really good tool that does that called OfficeAmp. which can again be added on to Slack, Microsoft Teams, and Google Chat. So you can go ahead and create a knowledge base of questions that employees frequently ask. And what the bot would do is that whenever an employee asks that question, the bot would auto resolve that question. So for example, if you say, where do I get my pay slips? Where do I get information about my 401ks? Where do I go ahead and see what are the employee benefits? So all those questions would be auto resolved by the bot, and it saves up a lot of time, for the HR folks and for the people ops folks. What employees can also do on Office AMP is that they can go ahead and create HR requests. So in case you need business cards or you need any information related to your direct deposit information or anything, you can just go ahead and create a request on Office AMP. And what we'd be able to do is that this would be assigned to a category owner, and that person can work on the request and resolve the request. Any questions so far before we move on to expense tracking? Okay, great. So we'd move forward. In case you have any questions, feel free to go ahead and let me know within the chat section. So we've got another product called ExpenseTron, and the idea is that you can again send out direct messages to the bot, and the bot would be able to convert that into expense claims. So for example, if you say that I had lunch with a client yesterday, $51, the bot will be able to create an expense out of that. What I really like about ExpenseTron is that how simple it makes the upload of a receipt. So you can just click on upload receipt, and you'd be able to click a photograph of your receipt and drag and drop into the Slack interface, and the receipt would be uploaded. Subsequently, when you confirm the expense, your manager would be able to view the receipt and approve or deny that particular expense. ExpenseTron can also go ahead and create mileage expenses for you guys. So in case you say that just drove to 20 miles from New York to Boston, and we'd be able to create a mileage expense for you, and you can go ahead, upload a receipt associated with the expense, and then confirm the expense, and your manager can go ahead and approve it. 3 integrations that I'd like to talk about over here is that ExpenseTron has an integration with Xero, QuickBooks Online, and Google Drive. The idea being that Xero and QuickBooks Online are accounting tools, and once the expenses have been created, you can just go ahead and sync your expenses with QuickBooks Online and Xero. The Google Drive integration is more to categorize receipts. So we give you this one big folder wherein all of your receipts are categorized on a per employee basis, and then you can go ahead and sift through that folder at the end of the month to account for all the receipts with the particular expenses that have been filed. Any questions before we move on to employee engagement? Questions, anyone? Okay, great. So now we'd be talking a bit about employee engagement. I think as HR and people ops folks, we are really concerned about what the employee sentiment is related to the various issues in the organization. So for example, I think one thing that I usually do is that I send out various surveys to employees that ask them, if they get the autonomy related to their work area within the organization, or the learning and development initiatives within the organization, or if they're satisfied within the organization. So all of those things I think can be done very well by a tool called Poly. And Poly is again a tool that is available on Slack and Microsoft Teams. And you can just go ahead, send out questions to the employees that, do you think the organization provides you with various learning and development initiatives? And the employees can go ahead, either strongly agree, disagree, be neutral about it. And what Poly would do is that they would gauge the employee sentiment over a period of time, right? So you can just go ahead and view what the employee sentiment on a particular question is. And it's a tool that's really a boon to track employee engagement within Slack or MS Teams.
Finally, quick question. Can those all be anonymous as well?
Pardon me, sorry?
The responses to the questions, can those be anonymous?
Absolutely. So they can be anonymous, and I mean, the employees can also choose to give comments or responses along with why they have chosen a particular option. So if you're disagreeing with something, you can just give comments associated with that. And the comments and the responses both can be anonymous. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, great. So finally, a fun tool, Lunch Train, a tool that I use quite a lot of. And the whole idea is that you can add on Lunch Train to Slack. And whenever you're heading out for lunch, you can just go ahead and start a thread on it. And people can just board the train. So in case, if anybody wants to have lunch at the place where you're going, you can just go ahead and board the train. You can just tell them I'm going out for a donut to Dunkin' Donuts or whatever, and then people can just join you. Finally, we'd be talking about more channels. So earlier we've been talking about channels and how they can streamline your hiring, onboarding procedures, employee engagement. But now we'd be talking about channels and how they can create a culture within the organization, create a rewarding culture within the organization. So you can have various employee recognition programs, channels related to various employee recognition programs. For example, employee of the month in case there are new product launches. So you can just go ahead and send that out onto a channel. In case any of the sales folks have converted any customers, you can just go ahead and recognize employees on that particular channel. You can also have channels related to diversity groups, volunteer programs, or professional development clubs. So we run a program called Each One Teach One, which is a CSR initiative that our company has taken. And then we've got a channel around that, and all of the ideas or what we'd be doing within that particular program are discussed on that particular channel. In a similar fashion, you can have channels related to the analytics team can have their own channel, and then the learning and development team can have their own channels, so on and so forth. One of the things that I really suggest is that you can have an Ask Me Anything channel within Slack. The idea is that the employees can interact with the senior management on this channel, and they can just send out questions related to the vision of the company, how the company is doing, what are the goals in this particular quarter, and you can just ask that to the senior management, and the senior management can reply to you on that particular channel. So it creates a very open culture and a transparent culture within the organization, and the employee as a result has a feeling of belongingness towards the organization. So to sum it all up, what we've discussed so far is that you can go ahead and transfer some of your HR and people ops workflows to Slack, Microsoft Teams, and Google Chat. And you can go ahead, create channels to ensure a culture of transparency within the organization. The idea of transferring these workflows onto instant messaging platforms is that not only you ensure transparency within the organization, but the workflows become more efficient. And then all of the data related to hiring, onboarding, employee engagement is tracked in real time. Everything is happening in real time within Slack, which is what I love about it. It's a very fast moving medium. So everything is happening in real time. You're getting all the data, and you can create a culture of belonging, a rewarding culture within the organization using Slack, Microsoft Teams, and Google Chat. So I think with that, we've come to the end of the presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions that you guys have.
Hey, I apologize. I joined late. Is there a recording of this that we can get?
Sure. So we'd be sending out, this was a recorded session. We'd be sending out the recording to you in an email, and you can go back and revisit all of what you've missed. What I'd also like to mention at this point is that this webinar that we are conducting is part of a series of webinars that we do every month. So you can also join in the later webinars, and we'd be having much of the same information in those webinars as well. Any other questions?
Yeah, on the time and attendance,
Yeah.
Can you go back? Is there a way to set like work schedules for people at different locations?
Yes, you can go. So could you explain what do you mean by setting up work schedules for people? Like, for example, I work. Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, we have multiple buildings that people work at.
Yeah.
And we like to have their schedules there so that people can see and be able to trade times, etc.
Absolutely. So what you can do is that we've got a feature called employee scheduling within Attendance Bot, and that's a feature that my team has been working on, and so you can go ahead and create employee schedules within Attendance Bot. And for example, you just said that you have different buildings, so you can have certain attributes allocated with a particular shift. So for example, if you want to filter that in building number 8A, how many people are on the afternoon shift, so you can go ahead and filter that data as well, and you can see it within Attendance Bot. That's a really good question, and I'd really be interested in catching offline with you after the webinar. So we can, go ahead and have a one-on-one chat after the webinar ends, and I'd be happy to explain to you how employee scheduling works within Attendance Bot. Does that sound good? Any other questions that I can answer for you?
I have a question regarding the attendance bot as well.
Sure.
I definitely would like to follow up with you and get a deeper dive on that. But in general, do we have the ability to synchronize the attendance bot to one shared calendar? So, for example, we actually have a calendar that is titled a DTO calendar where everyone puts their out of office time.
Yeah.
And is there a way, because I know that they can sync from the app within Slack, but can we have them all sync to that one calendar?
Yes, you can. So just a confirmation over there. Is this an Outlook calendar that you're talking about?
It is an Outlook calendar. Yep.
Yep. So what you can do is that you can go ahead and sync up your shared calendar with Attendance Bot. And what we do is that we give you an ICS file. So the idea being that all of the vacation requests that are created on Attendance Bot would be passed on to that shared calendar, and then you would be able to view which of the employees are out of office in a particular week and which of the employees are in office. So I'd be happy to demonstrate that to you. We can sync up offline after the webinar, and we can go ahead and talk more about Attendance Bot.
Yeah, that would be great if we could do that. I'd appreciate it.
Sure. What I would also suggest is, could you send your email address to me as a private message in the chat box? So we'd be able to sync up after the webinar, and I'll be happy to talk more about Attendance Bot once the webinar ends. We've got a couple of more questions. Oh, that's just my colleague. Okay, great. Any more questions? Okay, great. So if you have any questions at a later point, feel free to message us at hi@anake.com. So that's how you spell that, hi@anake.com. And we'd be happy to help you out. And I would like to thank you all once again for coming onto the webinar. And I really appreciate your time. And should you want us to go ahead and have webinars around some other topics, you can just forward that as a feedback to us, and we'd be more than happy to incorporate that feedback and create webinars on it. Thanks a lot. Everyone, have a great day ahead. I really appreciate your time. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.